I'd like to call the Monessen City Council work session on June 1st to order. Roll call, please.
Councilman Grieger. Here. Councilor Coles. Here. Councilwoman Thomas.
Here.
Councilman Wojciechowski.
Here.
Mayor Sherrill.
Here. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will open the floor to public comment on agenda items, if there are any. No. Okay.
I got a question about that, because I was emailed something some people asked, and they were more confused or concerned that the agenda didn't go out until after 1:30. People work. By the time they get home, then it said there was no meeting for public.
Yeah, there was a delay on the agenda, creating the agenda, so I posted it as soon as I got it.
Okay, so, all right.
Yeah. So items received for discussion, the first one is the repurpose of 2 police interceptor vehicles, which were removed from service. So as you know, we got 2 new police vehicles from that grant through the Arthur lawsuit through Westmoreland Community Foundation. So Chief Smith decommissioned 2 of the police vehicles, I assume the older ones. So instead of selling them, because they have so many miles on them, we decided to use them for code and fire. I don't know if Councilman Greger had anything on that, since that falls under your jurisdiction of code.
Traditionally, that's been the way that the different organizations like the fire department and the code enforcement officers receive their vehicles. And I believe the last municipal chief to actually use one was Charles Keller. And then when Tim Billick became the municipal chief, he didn't want to have that vehicle. So that vehicle sat down at the city garage until it rusted away. Code enforcement is the same situation. When they get vehicles like that, they get repurposed. We've had the opportunity to get them done, to get them new decals put on them early. So we took advantage of that.
And there was a reduction on insurance, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. But it has to still be approved by council before we can let them go in service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because one's out here, right?
Yeah, the code enforcement one is sitting here. The fire chief one is sitting up in the city garage at this time until they receive approval.
Which, I have a couple questions. Great repurposing the 2 police interceptors. We were last year trying to get Marvin air conditioning in his old one, if I remember, because he didn't unfortunately have air conditioning. My question is, when was this decided?
It's being decided tonight, and it'll be also next Tuesday's agenda.
But the cars were already done ahead of time. So it's a foregone conclusion, an afterthought. The cars were done May 15th, I was told, because they were posted on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you did the cars, you went ahead and did them. Now you're saying, hey, let's repurpose these police vehicles for this purpose.
Well, to be honest with you, it's kind of a no-brainer.
It's not a question about that. The question is...
Again, if I could finish, it's kind of a no-brainer. We had the opportunity to get it done so they could go in service as soon as possible.
Do you think that should have been a discussion with the rest of us?
Yeah, and we're having that
it?
discussion now.
Where was it? Where was it
Right
before
now.
you did it?
Right now. We're
No,
having the
where
discussion
was
right
it
now.
before you did it?
Tony, I was proactive instead of reactive.
You don't have the right to do that. You're
No.
not all of city council. We all supposed to discuss things. Clarity. You kept talking it when you stood up at this podium over here, all of your campaigns. Mr. Wojciechowski, you need to let's be clear. Let's do this. Hey, clarity's sake. You pummeled it to death. Now, that's not the case, and I want to know why. That's the only reason I'm asking. It could have been a simple email to me and Lois and saying, hey, we want to repurpose these vehicles, we're going to have to get them fixed, or, I'm not fixed, excuse me, they're going to get detailed and whatever. We're going to put it on the agenda next month, but we'd like to do it ahead of time, be proactive as you speak. Nothing. Again, nothing. What's your excuse?
I have no excuse.
No, you don't have an excuse.
No.
You're not clarity again.
I don't have an excuse.
And does it, what entails, and I would just have a curious question, we maintain insurance on all vehicles.
Correct.
Okay. Does the car, and I don't remember, I don't know if Marvin had this or not, is there a gas card associated with each one?
With the police cars, I know there is.
Police cars, yes.
Yes. I don't know for the code car, John, do you know? If there's a gas card with the code car?
And what about now for the fire chief car?
I don't believe that there'll be a card for that.
And I'm just asking, I'm not complaining, I just don't know if that's the case.
I don't believe there's one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do know that he has an allowance for fuel.
And what is that?
I off the top of my head, I couldn't give you those numbers.
So again,
I can have that for you at the next meeting.
that's not the important thing. I think it's a great idea. My point is, one time again, that Lois and I have complained and threw fits about, and Mr. Greger, you have sat at this table with people that are going, Tony, you're right. We got to do better. You know, this shouldn't happen. You're right. Tony, you're right. Lois, I apologize. You know, it was an afterthought. Shouldn't have done it. Boom, you do it again.
Actually, I did apologize to Lois about the situation. Is that not correct,
Well,
Lois?
but my question, I'm gonna ask Mr. Tim. Isn't it, you did after the fact, okay?
I did.
But my question is this, aren't we correct in saying that anything that comes before on this, that hasn't already been a decision made, shouldn't we all council members be involved in the decision making before it's put on here?
The best, well, not before necessarily. it's
Well, no,
put
I
on
know,
here,
but shouldn't we
before
know
the
for,
action-
it's already done?
Yeah, before actions.
Right,
taken.
that's what I mean,
The
before
best
any action's
practice
taken.
is- Now, in
Right.
some cases, and I don't know the specific circumstances of this, in some cases, things are time sensitive.
Right, we understand, but this was.
In which case, you may want to talk about it beforehand.
Right.
There's this thing called email.
Or the other example is sometimes there's cost savings that.
And-
you can't
And that's
do for the
fine.
And that's fine, but
But-
here's my part that I'm bitching about. On May 16th,
The recorder. Oh, okay.
on May 16th, I sent all of you an email questioning what's going on with the fire chief car, that it's already been detailed and everything. I got no response back from any of you. Not a damn word.
And
So,
you
does
will
that
not,
mean-
you will not get a response from me when you are as uncivil as you were.
Oh,
You
excuse
were,
me.
no, I'm
Can I
sorry,
bring the
I'm
email
sorry.
up? Can I bring the email up? Let's talk
you
about
can-
the email.
You can bring it
No,
up
you
all
brought
you
it up.
want. You can bring it up all you want.
I copied Tim, I copied everybody, and I asked, what's going on with the car? Did we talk about this, Lois? I copied everybody. I demanded to at least get an explanation. Lois followed up and said, why didn't you answer Councilman Orzachowski? Again, nothing. You guys practice what you preach. You complain completely that everything was on above the board and everything else, and you're going to be trustworthy and everything. You have yet to prove it. And now you do things that don't even include us. You know what? That's my only complaint about it. If we did that to you, you'd be screaming to high heaven.
No.
And Mr.
Correct.
Witt's already said to the point, this has got to stop. Council needs to work together, and council needs to bury the hatchet on a lot of stuff. We've tried, and I'm not speaking for Lois, but we've tried. And then it continues, the next meeting, boom, right out of the bat. It's not your money. It's taxpayers' money. Whether you like it, you don't like it, it was proactive or whatever, it's not your money.
And that's what the voting procedures are for. If we bring it to the table, we vote on it. And whether we agree or disagree, the vote decides. And my thing was, we said nothing about, even when we ordered the tractor and the boom, only thing we had against it was that we weren't included in the decision made. We were for it because we knew they needed it. Same thing here. This is a good idea, but we should have been included in that before it was already done. That's the only thing we've been asking. whether, it doesn't matter whether we agree or disagree, because the vote decides. But we should, once again, be included in every process that takes place. We are on council just like everyone else. That's all we're asking.
This stuff didn't come out of this, did not come out of thin air and drove John crazy this morning to make it. Somebody told him to put this together, and he had bits and pieces from different people to do it. So where's the conversation ahead of time? None.
But about the.
No, you'll make up some stupid remark that doesn't make any sense.
Now, do you understand why I don't respond to you?
Don't respond to me
I
then.
will not.
Then,
Until you can learn to talk civilly to someone. I apologize to Lois. I will not apologize to you because of your attitude.
do what you want. You'll do it anyways.
And just to clarify, so the agenda for work sessions, these are items that, I mean, you guys won't necessarily have talked about all the items before they're added to the agenda. I think the key thing to keep in mind is that before action on these items is taken, the best practice is to talk about it. Once again, unless there's some sort of compelling circumstance where you can't talk about it or there's not cost savings, and then you need to ratify it if it's specifically in your department. But once again, I mean, that's the best practice. But on the agenda, there may be things on the agenda that you definitely would not have talked about already at this point. So just to point that out as the final comment on that.
But as you said, you normally, best practices before any action is taking place, they should be discussed with all members of council.
If it's action that council has to take. Because
Correct.
once again, in your individual departments, there are actions that you may have to take within your individual departments that council doesn't have to approve. Those don't need council approval. You can just act on your own in that respect. But if it's something that requires council approval, before the action is taken, once again, there are some exceptions to that, but before the action is taken, the best thing to do is to talk about it and make sure that, other council members are aware.
Thank you.
Is there anything else on the cars?
No.
Okay. Advertise the sale of the 1998 GMC truck previously used by the code department. Anyone have anything on that?
It has to get listed in the paper, correct, for bids, sealed bids.
Unless you don't think it's worth, I think it's $1,000. If it's less than $1,000, you don't have to follow the.
I'll be very impressed if we get $1,000 for it.
Well, I'm surprised. If I remember correctly, Ernie wanted the one police car that had the transmission blown out of it, and Ernie didn't want it.
What'd you say, Tim, I didn't hear you.
$1,000 is a threshold in the third-class city code where if it's something that you in good faith believe you're going to get less than $1,000 for, there's a procedure where council can approve to have it posted here in the city hall on a bulletin board to solicit bids instead of actually incurring the expense, which is fairly costly to put it in the paper if it's just something that's going to be, you're not going to get a whole lot of money for it. So
$300 or $400.
that's why there's a provision built in that if it's, I think it's either $1,000 or $1,500. I'd have to look that up off the top of my head, but you can approve it if in good faith you think it's going to bring in less than $1,000.
C, the removal of the parking meters upon approval of the new ordinance number 4 of 2020. So that will obviously, it'll be the second reading next week. We touched on this a little bit last week or last month about what we would do with the meters. So obviously when they're removed, we'll have to fill in the holes where the pipes are. I don't know if the Public Works Department would have any use for any of the pipes. Maybe they could keep a few if they need them for something. And then the meters, I was thinking maybe, and I think Tony brought this up too, if we post them to see if we could sell them for parts. I mean, there might be someone out there that needs parts for them. They're fairly old. I don't know. Someone might want them.
No,
They're
actually,
a lot.
those meters, believe it or not, last year,
They were recalibrated.
They were recalibrated and they were rebuilt.
Oh, were they
They were rebuilt during Ron when he was here.
Okay.
They got.
I knew they were recalibrated, but I knew they were rebuilt. So we'll have to take an inventory of how many there are. And I'm sure we probably have others lying around too that were taken off. So maybe some of the older ones that were taken off that weren't calibrated or fixed to get sold for parts or whatever. So that'll be good. Okay. Letter D, sanitation of police vehicles, Ford Motor Company. You all saw the email from Officer Smarcheck. I'm just going to read it out loud for the record. I was advised today by Ford Motor Company that they are piloting a new program that involves the self-sanitation of their police vehicles. Apparently, they have figured out a way to program their new police vehicles to engage a, quote, heat soak mode if desired. Basically, the car runs itself only when selected by the officer for a total period of about 45 minutes with its interior heat on max and at a slightly higher than normal temperature in specific cycles. According to Ford, this is successfully killing 99% of communicable germs and viruses on surfaces within the car and is safe to do. I've been asked if we are interested in participating in the program. Each vehicle will have to briefly go into the dealer to have the programming done. It is likely that we will be the only ones in the Mon Valley and maybe in the greater Pittsburgh area to have this capability. Does the city authorize me to do this? There will be no charge to us. Jeff. So that's the only information I have on it is what was sent there. But if you need more information, I'm sure we can get it from
Yeah,
Ford.
we probably should have more, I know it says there's no charge, but how long, is this gonna occur every day? And is the car gonna run for 45 minutes? Cause that burns like that. I mean, just some procedure of how it's gonna be
Well,
done.
They typically run their cars constantly anyway because
Right,
it's a police
understand it,
procedure, but with having the heat on
Yeah,
it,
nobody
so
can
they-
be in there when it's one
No,
25
no.
minutes at
But
max
is this
temperature.
just the two new cruisers?
I believe so.
He also states, though, they have to go back to the garage to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, for the programming. So I don't know what that entails, or how long that will take. Like I said, this is the only information I have on it.
And I'd also ask somebody to find out
I think we can take the governor off the heater.
how long does the cleansing last for?
Well, like the
Is it for
cleanliness
just
of
a
it.
day or is it for?
Be
I mean,
one
how
shift.
often it needs to be done.
Right.
It would be one shift, once a shift if you were gonna do it.
Yeah.
Because if you're sterilizing it that way with the heat, and that the officer's in there all day, in and out, the next shift coming in would have to sterilize it.
So going back to the dealership is only to program it then?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. That's all I could think of on that. So how long will it be in the garage, and how long will the?
So possibly three times a day, possibly. Is this just during the COVID time and then it'll cease or?
And are they gonna have the capabilities of shutting it off? I'd hate to see them in the middle of doing it, and they get a call that there's a major
No,
emergency.
can't use the
and
car.
we can't use the car.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, okay.
the city would
That's
get
a valid
sued.
question.
Nor would I wonder on a timer either, that, God forbid, if there was a suspect in the back of the car and it kicked on and he got off. That'd be-
Well, from what I gathered, the officer turns it on. So I don't think anyone would turn it on while someone's in the car. I would hope not.
I would hope not. I mean, that could be as simple as accidentally hit a button or something. Oops.
Yeah.
You don't know.
So that's a good question, if it can be turned off. I'm gonna assume it can be turned off, but you never know, so that's a valid question. Okay, item E, fire station number 2, Hilltop. The roof has been in disrepair for the past few years. The fireman's board will submit a quotation to repair the roof. So did you all get that? We got it earlier today.
Yeah.
There's two. One is for, I assume, a patchwork, and the other is for the full roof. I have also been searching for grants for this project, but I didn't realize how bad the roof actually was. They sent a picture which John couldn't print out, so we'll have to forward it to you both, but there's some areas where the plaster's like falling from the ceiling and everything, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're aware because
You can
last year
elaborate.
we got a quote to replace the whole roof with trusses.
Do you remember what that quote was?
$56,000. Question on this, and that is 3 bids?
It's under $18,000. So it's up to the board, up to the council whether we want to go.
What is?
This
the
is just,
amount
I got
on
this
that?
as an informational bid.
5,000.
I understand that, but and I think we made a policy that I know this council, this year has not changed, and that was anything coming into the city required 3 bids. That was passed by council. That even means if you even get $400 or $500 repair on something, or a piece of equipment, you have to get 3 bids, because the street guys, am I correct, Lois?
I think we added in 1,000.
Maybe we had it at 1,000. But we had put in place where you have to get 3
Is it
bids.
a resolution?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any specific policy that the city would have had. You'd have to look at that. The bid requirements for just generally municipal governments is, I think it's 10,400 or 11,000, somewhere right around there. It's less than that. It is not required to have 3 bids. If it's between 10,400 and I think 21,000, it's 3 bids, and anything over that's the public bidding requirement. So this does not raise an issue with the general third-class city code bidding requirements, but if you guys have a policy, you may want to take a look at that because, you know, you want to follow that policy.
I'm not aware of that policy. It may actually exist, put in place by the previous council, but kind of ridiculous.
Well, I mean, council, you know, if it was adopted by resolution before, council has the option to waive that policy as well, so, but council would need to affirmatively take the action to waive that policy in any particular instance.
If we were going to waive that policy, we would have to do it in a voting session.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, will this get it up to speed where it needs to be?
I would say so. Like I said, the $10,000 one, that's to replace the roof outright, and the $5,000 is to patch it where
Or
it
it
is.
looks like the roof in the chicken.
Lois, I talked to the chief from up there, and that roof will replace from the front facade all the way to the rear, but not the new addition. That new addition is still in good shape, but this is just from the front facade.
Actually the bad part.
Right. And this needs to be done. It should have been done 6 years ago.
Right.
We're starting to lose structural integrity.
No, that's fine. I was just wondering would this basically get it to where it needed to be?
And that's, the $10,000 is a complete repair.
Okay, because I was wondering if they were just going to do a section now and then come back and say we need to do
No,
another
everything that's
section.
bad would be replaced.
So just on the older structure, the older part of the building. Street ordinances were advertised in the local newspaper in May. Ordinance 2 of 2020, the repeal of ordinance number 1 of 2019, ordinance 3 of 2020, the sign and burning ordinance, and ordinance 4 of 2020, the downtown parking ordinance. Those will be up for the second reading at next week's meeting.
So that they're going to get voted on?
Yes.
So I will bring up my comments about the very first one at that time.
Okay. The fireworks ordinance, this one, I believe it was either 2017 or 2018, the state updated their fireworks regulations. So 2017? Okay. So this is to update our 2008 ordinance on fireworks to reflect the changes that the state made in their ordinance or in their regulations. So it further defines what is consumer fireworks, what is display fireworks, and puts in regulations. I believe there's in here, is it 150 feet within an inhabited structure? Trying to think of other highlights.
150 feet, that basically you can't shoot near any, and no one can shoot near their home.
Yeah, that's correct. So a couple of the highlights in this are, it changes, tracking the new law, or the updated law. It changes the definition of display fireworks and consumer fireworks to be consistent with that. It also, because there was a court case about the delegation doctrine, it eliminates language that would have been problematic under the delegation doctrine, or non-delegation doctrine. It also ups the bond requirement to be consistent with the statute, and then it incorporates the limitations for where you can fire, including, as you pointed out, 150 feet from a occupiable structure And so that's an important definition in the new statute as well, along with this ordinance. Occupiable structure doesn't mean that it's a structure that's actually occupied. It could be vacant still, but if it's occupiable, so if somebody could be in it, you can't shoot within 150 feet of that. And that's, like I said, I mean, that's not a city thing, that's a statewide law,
So-
and that's intended to protect, you know, buildings from fires and people from fires and whatnot.
So not a garage, for example.
Oh, no, a
It's
garage.
occupiable, you can
Yeah,
live in
a
a
garage
garage.
would count.
No, that's,
Yep.
that's true.
It's pretty much any structure where there could be a person inside, because
You
the
figure
key is you want to
you got
avoid
homeless people.
potentially
That's true.
having,
Even though they're not supposed to
Something
be
burnt
there,
out.
they may be living within there. I don't know.
Got it.
Got it, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
But are we gonna enforce that, all this?
I think if we adopt it, we can
Yes,
enforce it.
because we know that it's not.
Yeah.
That's always an issue.
It's not being enforced
Right,
at the moment.
right, yeah.
So we don't want,
admittedly, enforcement is difficult too, just because certain times of year you get inundated with calls. and
Right.
By the time somebody shows up to the
They're
call,
gone.
It's done.
they're gone. I mean,
most of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes people go for a few.
but it is good
Yeah, to
to
go
try
check.
and enforce.
They are getting out of hand in the city of Monessen now. There's whole neighborhoods that people were being bombarded with debris from the fireworks being shot.
After. Is there a time limit on that too? Like,
Like
is
a
there a
time
time at night? Normally is, but you'll have fireworks going off 2, 3 o'clock.
Is that something we can do?
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's,
Yeah, I don't have anything against fireworks, but when they're going off at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, you gotta go to work the next day.
Well, you know, a lot of people get up early, so, you know, after 10 o'clock, you're keeping a lot of people up.
That's what I would think, like, after 10, like, not to do it. I don't know.
There's no time limit in there? Mr. White?
I'd have to, I'm not recalling a time limit, because there was no time limit in the prior ordinance. We could incorporate a time limit into that. I think that would be a good idea.
Could you have us for the next meeting?
Yep.
Do you guys have a recommendation on, like, not shooting off fireworks beyond X time? Like, what time would you think is reasonable?
Doesn't even dark until late.
About 11, that's what I'm saying, like 11?
Yeah,
Well, that's what I was thinking, 10,
Y'all should
15.
just let us have fun for the 4th of July.
I was
People
thinking
come
11.
together with the COVID, with the racial tension right now, like, let us have a little bit of fun.
I was thinking 11.
Like
11
11,
makes
12.
Yeah, 11.
11,
11's good,
But
'cause
it doesn't start getting dark.
2, 9, that's why I figured 2 hours is long enough to shoot off some fireworks.
I don't want people shooting them off at 3 in the morning.
No, not 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
that's
I
just
could see
ridiculous.
11.
I would
could
say
see
11.
p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That
think
seems reasonable.
it doesn't get dark till 9,
Not that long.
9:15.
You
So
can't have fun and see it.
I'd say 11.
The other thing that some municipalities do is they have it sectored off or segmented off certain times of year. So for example, for the July holiday, you wanted to, you know, give a broader period
Right.
of time. You could say
True.
from this date to this date.
Any other,
And then
any other day, that's,
So,
that's what I
I
was
mean, I don't know
thinking.
if there's any interest in doing something like that, because then you're not running into the issue, once again, I mean, 4th of July is a
Right.
special
Yeah.
time. and-
Well, that might work. I
So,
think
like-
on the, like, 4th of July, maybe, if it's gone now, but Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day.
Well, what if we say
12.
from Memorial Day to Labor Day, it's 11 or 12, and then any other time of the year, like the cutoff is 10 or something like, because it gets darker later in the summer anyway, as opposed to December. I don't know.
I'm more leaning to say on those
On
specific
the specific
holidays,
days.
making it to 12. But after that, no.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So
I agree with you.
I don't want to go to 12 every
Like
night.
Memorial Day, 4th
4th
of
of July
July,
and Labor Day.
Labor Day. Now, would we do that so it was the exact day, or would it be the legal holiday day?
No, I guess the holiday, the
The
actual
legal-
holiday.
Legal holiday.
Legal holiday, right.
What about New Year's Eve?
11 o'clock.
It's
Because I mean, that's a fireworks holiday.
It gets dark early.
Yeah.
11. So any other day, 11. What do you
Oh,
think?
you're thinking at midnight, they're
Yeah.
gonna shoot.
For the holidays, 12.
New Year's, people are probably not gonna follow that.
Yeah, we're not worried about
That's New Year's, 12
Yeah.
o'clock, those gonna be.
Right, they're gonna be inside doing this.
I mean, think about it, weekdays, 11 o'clock on weekdays, is that too late?
Well, if we change it to the holidays, we don't need that. We can have it at 10 any other day.
Sure,
Well,
sure.
But the holidays,
Well, so example, I got
Like
a
that,
complaint
10 the other
on
day.
Memorial Day, because it was a Monday,
Memorial Day,
obviously,
well.
and someone was shooting off fireworks at 11:30.
That's all.
And, yeah, so someone's like, I have to go to work tomorrow,
Well,
like, why are they
Well,
doing
it-
this? And
Well, you have
so
to, you gotta
I
have
think
some
that's
kind of
what it is.
leniency that,
Yeah.
people have to enjoy their holidays. What do you guys think, 12 on a holiday is, 10 or 11 the other days?
I don't think that's.
Let me
a
say
problem.
10 the other days, because they're going to work, I don't want nothing going off.
Well, the problem is it's not so much the firework,
Mhm.
believe it or not. It's after the firework goes off, every dog in your neighborhood barks for 20 minutes to a half hour. That's where it really gets you.
Also true.
And you can't control that.
No.
They're gonna go off, even if you set them at 9, they're gonna start barking, so it's not gonna
I agree with Lois, on every day, and the other day it's 10 o'clock.
be 10 o'clock, the
Holidays,
holiday's
midnight.
12,
So Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, and New Year's,
12.
okay, any other holidays?
10
I feel like
I
those
think
are,
that's it.
those are all
your-
the fireworks
Yeah, that's
holidays, I
it.
think.
And then 10 the other days.
So like 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day, and New Year's.
Yeah.
Are you shutting off fireworks on New Year's, is that what you're doing?
I don't,
You?
I am not in town on New Year's.
Okay, I never heard. Ooh, okay, that's cool.
I'm the social butterfly on New Year's.
12, okay, that'll work, and 10 the other way.
So item H, acceptance of Glenda Mavrikis' resignation from the library board. She sent this to us around the time that COVID happened, and I realized after last month's meeting that we did not accept it, so that's why it's on here now. So, I don't, is there a copy of her letter, in here? I don't think I saw it. But Dave Zolka did send me a copy of the letter, so I'll make sure that that's attached next month, or next meeting, so we could read it. Item I, hire an accounting / payroll clerk. Obviously, we've been in the interview process, so, we have the next round tomorrow, so we'll hopefully have a selection by next week. Item J, advertise for the vacant library board position, obviously because Glenda is resigning, so we'll fill that for the remainder of the term. I don't remember when her term would have expired off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure John has that.
They're 5-year terms, and I believe she's only been in for about 2 years.
Okay, so 3 years left, 3.5 or so. Okay. Item K, advertising for the position of city clerk, salary range $35,000 to $50,000, experience will determine salary. I was able to find the ordinance. You also have it here somewhere. Here it is. So, again, for the record, I'm going to read this. It's only one page. So this was enacted, well, the original one was enacted in 1922. This was amended in 1964. Section 1 of Ordinance 6 of the city as enacted January 7th, 1922, and entitled An Ordinance to Prescribe the Duties of City Clerk is hereby amended to read as follows. The city clerk of the city of Monessen shall perform all the duties and may exercise all the powers vested by law in city clerks of cities of the third class. They shall ex officio act as the Secretary of the Board of Health, Clerk of the Board of Revision and Taxes and Appeals, and Assistant to the Director of Accounts and Finance. He shall serve as Clerk of the Council and keep and maintain all records and books required to be kept and maintained by the City Council. He shall keep on file all city contracts and shall furnish to each department of the city government certified copies of any vote, resolution, or ordinance pertinent to such department. He shall certify over the seal of the city all appointments and elections of subordinate officers made by the council or the mayor, and shall administer to such subordinate officers the oath prescribed by Section 1, Article 7 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth, and/or any other oath required of such subordinates as a condition for assumption of their respective offices, and shall keep a record of all such oaths in a book to be specially provided for the purpose. As assistant to the Director of Accounts and Finance, the city clerk shall supervise all printing and advertising done by authority of the City Council. The city clerk shall file and preserve the original copies of all ordinances and resolutions passed by council and all other documents, reports, opinions of the city solicitor, and other memoranda related to the business of the city and not required by law to be kept in any other department. He shall devise an orderly and systematic method of filing and said documents so that they may at all times be readily located. He shall be responsible for the safekeeping thereof, shall permit the examination and inspection thereof by the public, but shall not permit any of them to be taken from his office. The city clerk shall maintain his office as such place as shall be directed by the city council, and shall keep his office open such days and hours as shall be stipulated by the city council by resolution or otherwise, ordained and enacted into an ordinance and passed in the city of Monessen, Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, this 23rd day of June, 1964, Hugo Planning. So that is different from, there is an ordinance on the books, I don't remember what the ordinance number is, with separate city administrator duties. So this is outlining specifically what the ordinance for city clerk. So that's why I pulled this one. So, is there discussion on this?
So where's the guideline going to be for this salary? I mean, if you're walking into a job interview, 35 to 50,000 is a heck of a swing. That is a heck of a swing. It's almost 20 grand. Okay, I could see 2 or 3 or 4,000, but where's it going to be decided, or how's it going to be decided that a person that you hire is only worth 35, or wow, they're worth 50?
Would that be council's decision?
That's what I'm asking.
Based on their
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, based on like the qualifications.
Wouldn't it be based on their experience?
Where do you decide that and draw the line that?
That's what we have to decide.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for, to make those decisions. I
So
mean, you and I may disagree on what someone is worth. And
It's
that's
not
why
what the
you would have
person's
to-
worth, it's what the position is worth.
It's also what the person is worth. Just because you get someone that comes in that doesn't have any previous experience or minimal experience, you're going to give them the top end of the scale. I don't think that would be prudent.
No, but I think you should be advertising the position at a particular salary, and that's it.
And what level would you recommend?
You don't do it, you do it across the board middle
What
level.
level would you recommend?
If you're doing 35 to 50, then I would say somewhere around, what, 40, 42.
That's reasonable.
It's the reason I'm pushing on this is because think of this, if you're sitting there and you're applying for this job, and you're sitting in front of council, and you're getting an interview, the first question out of my mouth is, okay, besides the salary, benefits, and anything else, what's the salary? You can't tell anybody by law, well, it depends how good you are, that we can give you this or we can give you that. You've got to narrow it down to say this is what it is. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be worked in that say something that after 2 or 3 years or something, everybody hopefully gets a 2 or 3% raise, and everybody hopes for that in the real world. You don't always get it, but you can get it. But I feel very uncomfortable going into this saying there's a range between 35 and 50.
Actually, that was for negotiating with us to talk about what we thought the salary should be. And it was my thought that we should throw a range out there and see what council would agree on. And I find your suggestion of 42,000 perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, that's in the middle.
But
And
we
then there's
wanted
no-
everyone to have input.
Well, that's why we talk about it. That's why we discuss this before things happen. And that's why we're so adamant about that always is, you know, that's the discussion. It should be, is that reasonable for everybody? Because I would think if people apply for this job, they're probably going to ask you up front, as most businesses do, they're going to ask you, what's the pay set, what's the salary for this position? Because you certainly wouldn't want somebody that has an accounting and over the hill experience,
40 years.
okay? And they're going to tell you their expectation is 52.5, and I'm not going to talk to you to that, but they put their application in because there was no salary defined, okay, going in forward, or they didn't know that. So they wasted their time, they wasted our time.
Well, that's why we're here, to decide what we want to put in there.
I'm just throwing that out as a discussion.
I think 40 to 42 is fine. And if you still want to put a range, do you want to put 40 to
No.
42? Or
No,
just
No,
No,
you've got to
I
put
think-
a value on it that that's where
So
it's
do
at.
you all think 42?
Yeah, 42 to the
For
middle.
the mere reason, Matt, we put a value on the payroll and accounting, it's $16.50 an hour.
Right.
It wasn't between $16.50 and 22, it was $16.50 an hour. Am I right, John?
Those are union,
Yeah, they are, but
they're
still.
union numbers. This is not a union number. This is a,
At will.
But still.
My
people-
only thing is, say we get this great candidate comes in, and we're offering 42,000, and they look at us and go, we can't do it for, I can't do it for less than 45 or $46,000. Are we gonna have the flexibility to give them that?
I don't think we have the flexibility to do that at all until council decides to talk on it. We
Well,
don't have an HR
That's,
department.
well,
here.
if we're going to interview, isn't that what we're going to do?
No.
To talk to these people?
I don't think so. I think that number should be predefined before you talk to anybody, so people know. And if a great candidate comes back and says, I can only do the job for 45, I'm sorry, that's my bottom line. Then, if I'm right, Tim, council has that prerogative to talk amongst itself and say, you know what, this person is too good to let go.
I think that's what Don was saying.
That's the point I'm
Yeah.
trying to bring up.
That's okay, but you can't do it before that. Council
No.
has to get together and talk about it
Exactly.
again.
We have to interview, then you have to have the work session again, and then you have to vote on it. But my point was, if we do have this outstanding candidate, and, or you're gonna we don't wanna get locked into $42,000. But like you said, and you agreed with me, is if we do have this outstanding candidate, and the bottom line is they say we need 45, or I can't be here, and then we talk amongst ourselves, we do like we're doing now, and then we vote on it, we can offer them the 45. Yes?
Well, it's all
I don't know
dependent
if that
on
runs
who
into a
we-
legal problem, Tim.
Well, I mean, I understand what's being said. I mean, you want to have the flexibility because you may have somebody with outstanding experience that's bringing a lot to the table, and you want to
Yes.
motivate somebody that has that ability by offering them a little bit more. But anybody who's applying is going to need something a little more narrow than maybe 35 to 50,000
Well-
in the actual advertisement itself.
So you could put in there starting at $42,000.
Well, and that's what a lot of municipalities and just employers in general do is they'll note that the, proposed salary is X, subject to, potential adjustment or something like
Then
that.
we need to make sure
And
we
then
do
you
it
have the
properly.
ability to interview, find out what their qualifications are, but at least they have a sense of where the starting salary is, so they're not gonna be unreasonable asking for something that's $10,000 more than that.
Right.
And you guys are at least narrowing the field, so you're not gonna have to deal with applications like that, but you still have the flexibility, if you find somebody that's really outstanding, to make an offer, and then council, once again, would need to approve as part of the hiring motion at a meeting, to then approve what the salary is for that specific.
So we'll
person.
need to make sure we get this worded properly.
Yeah.
And the other question is, Tim, say somebody, as we offered 42, say someone comes in and says, I can only do this for 45. Okay. Say we offer that position to the person for 45, and so for some reason they turn it down. We have to offer the next candidate 45. We cannot go lower because that would be discrimination.
No, that's not, you would actually have the opportunity, because the actual motion itself is tied to a specific person, and so the salary may be tied to a specific person and their qualifications.
Well, say they're
So-
equal.
Well, I mean, yeah, with their equal qualifications, then yeah, you don't, I mean.
Okay, that's all I want to make
Yeah,
sure.
Assuming they're equal qualifications, now.
Who makes
equal
that decision?
Yeah, I mean, that could
Wouldn't
be
that us?
tough to determine, because what if one person has 3 months more municipal experience, or their municipal experience is qualitatively a little bit better than somebody else's? I mean, that would be very, very tough, but, yeah, I mean, ideally, the point is correct, that you need to try and treat equal candidates equally, I mean, there's no.
What happens is, say that person says, I'll do it for 45. But then that next, so they don't take it, so we go to the next person who is on equal, but they don't ask for 45.
Well, then, I mean, if they're okay with that bottom one, because the prior person didn't take it, then you guys are okay with approving it for that top one.
They wouldn't know, so, but even though they have commensurate experience and degree in education, we don't offer the 45, and then what if they find out later somehow? I mean, they might talk to them.
And that's why this is.
Is that an issue
It's really an issue for executive session,
That's what I'm saying,
right?
that can be an issue.
Which is why you'd want to talk about that as part of the interviewing process with the applicants, and then talk about it amongst yourselves in executive session, which is perfectly okay, under the Sunshine Act. But that would be a problem, because let's say two people on equal footing. Let's say they have 100% identical resumes. It's just one person is getting paid $44,000 in their current position, and one person is getting paid, $40,000 in their current position. Well, one's going to want $45,000 to leave their current position. The other one's going to want $42,000.
They're happy because they're getting $2,000 more.
Yeah, exactly. So
Right.
you may run into a circumstance where it's not a discriminatory reason as to why you'd offer a lesser amount that would be willing for somebody else to accept. You just want to make sure that it's not, in fact, for any sort of a discriminatory reason, and you're treating like candidates generally the same. So everybody's going to have their specific characteristics and their specific work histories and everything, but generally, yeah, you want to keep everybody the same. That's why you talk about it in executive session before you make any decisions, and make sure that both the applicant is okay with that and the council's okay with that, and then you approve that at a meeting, because then at that point it becomes public.
So maybe then, once we get the applications, we group them according to what we think they fall into. Like if they have the degree and experience, maybe they're grouped in one group and the other ones are grouped in another. So you already know up front who can get this amount and who can get that. Just something to think about. We look at the applications and say, oh, well, these ones are in this category in case they need one. Like, I don't know, there's something like
No, I mean, and you should do that anyway, because that's a good
Right.
idea, because, I mean, you might get, especially in this environment where there's a lot of people that are off work,
Right.
you may get flooded with applications, and a lot of them may, unfortunately, not be particularly good ones for
Right.
a public official city position. So you're going to want to rank and order those to prioritize people that may have municipal experience and may have longer work
Right.
histories and may have, the kinds of skills you're looking for in a specific city clerk, which lends itself to,
Right.
grouping them or prioritizing them or, giving them rankings, so to speak. But, I would think that each council person would want to do that individually and independently, so then, once you all start talking and decide who to interview and how to do that, you'll have, your own ideas to bring to the table and add to that discussion.
Okay, item L, purchase a new street sweeper under the CoStarz program. Dealer is listed as Stevenson Equipment, Loan Institution, KS State Bank, PA Agency CoStarz contract 025-021. Total price $177,980. $54,000 from the line usage fund. Loan amount $123,980 and a term for 4 years with an interest rate of 3.940%. And it's the same lending firm that handled the arm tractor. And the solicitor has reviewed the legal documents. And Tim and John can speak more on that.
The only thing I wanted to comment on was it's below the small capital borrowing requirements for the Local Government Youth Debt Act. So this is, it's a very similar process to what would have been used on the prior piece of equipment that was purchased. So it's fine from that perspective. And I also reviewed the documents, and I mean they're pretty standard, typical documents that you'd have with a municipal purchase like this.
We don't have the documents?
We do.
We don't?
I mean, I don't know what you guys do or
I
don't.
don't think we have them here.
Yeah.
I think we need them still.
What happened to the motion we made at the last, on May 12th, that we were gonna look for a pre-owned? We had a motion for that, we approved that.
Actually, he did take a look into that, and he found one that was like for $120,000. And if you recall, Lois, when I was talking to you, I had mentioned to you that he was going to be looking at some other options. It doesn't, and I have to agree with Tony, when Tony says, why should we buy someone else's problems? You know, yes, this may be under the 300 hours, it may be a few $1,000s cheaper, but if we're going to purchase something of this magnitude, we want to make sure that we aren't purchasing someone else's. Why did they get rid of it? And that was the only thing that I was thinking, and I know you find it hard to believe, but I actually agree with Councilman Orchakowski on this issue.
Yeah, I was just asking what happened from one minute we were looking at this.
Yeah.
And now we're at this. So I see where the 54,000 is coming in line usage. What's that amount to yearly? Because that's line usage. So is that dollar? How many couple, like, per person? Did we figure that out?
It's $1 million.
Per bill, okay. So then the rest of the following 4 years, that's coming out of,
Line usage.
it's for all 4 years is coming out of line usage.
That'd be correct, John?
But online usage isn't a guaranteed number. So my couple questions are, and I'm going to if you're
No,
done.
that's fine, I was just curious.
Okay, we're straddling, as we're going to get into the next thing too, we're straddling this city for another 4-year debt. We just did a massive debt. We debt happy?
I don't know, are you?
I'm not, because I wasn't for any of this stuff, but you guys are.
Well,
Here's-
I wouldn't say I was debt happy.
Here's
I
some-
would say that we need to have the equipment to get
Here's
the
some
work
used
done.
equipment. And
Pardon
I
me?
agree with you, we talked about it before, but when we agreed to make the motion to look at used equipment, I got some prices of stuff. 2013 International Durastar, 4,300, 99.5. Here's one, the 2010 for 69.9. Here's another one of 2010 for 69.9, and they're all over the internet.
I'm
And the
sure they
reason-
are, but again, I'm going to have to say I have to agree with your statement before. Why would we purchase someone else's problems?
I agree, but the question is it was also discussed, and and I could be incorrect, but I'll ask everybody to understand this. I believe I asked for a quote or find out how much it was going to cost to repair the one we have.
It was like $40,000 to repair it.
Okay, so,
Yeah, that was just to repair what they could see was bad with it.
okay,
They were looking at $40,000.
but we're not going to get anything for it because it's not worth anything.
No.
So, again, we're not a rich community. We're not Mount Lebanon. We keep going into massive years of debt here.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think it's massive debt.
Well, Don, when you add on the arm tractor, the other tractor, and everything else that got passed, yeah, it's probably, you
And it's
guys are gonna
coming,
spend $1
and
million.
this is coming out of different
But you're gonna spend
funds?
almost $1 million.
I
Where
don't
are
think
we
so.
getting the money?
483,000?
For everything?
Yes. And it's spaced out over the years. You're going to avoid the fines that we're going to incur because we have not been cleaning out our catch basins. We have not been sweeping the streets. The equipment has been operational. The sweeper has been operational for almost a year.
A correction there, the one thing, Don,
What's that?
the sweeper does not clear the catch basins.
Ah.
The vac truck does.
The sweeper actually does clear them. And the way that it clears them is it cleans off the debris that's running into them.
That's correct, but if there's anything that we worried about from the EPA, it was actual clogging of the sewers that we're responsible to
The
maintain.
DEP is also concerned with cleaning up the streets. And we haven't been filing those reports because the sweeper hasn't been running, which we had a discussion at, I think it was the last meeting,
We did.
about the situation with us losing funding because of that.
We're just.
I understand, I don't like to spend money, but if we don't have the equipment that can do the job, and I'm sorry, I listened to what you said the last time, and I'm not comfortable with buying used. It's been my history with buying used equipment that we do run into other people's problems. And as much as I hate to spend the money, we need to have the proper equipment to get the work done. This piece of equipment, if it's properly maintained for a change of pace in the city of Monessen, should last 25 years. If you figure out the cost per year over a 25-year period, it's a lot less expensive than spending $30,000 or $40,000 every other year.
But remember, we didn't pay for the original.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately, we have to pay for this one. And line usage fees are the way to go. You're not taking it out of the general fund. Yeah, is the line usage fee the exact same amount every month? No. But it comes in within a reasonable range that we can budget for it. And that's the whole secret to this, is budgeting for it. Do I like paying interest? Absolutely not. But we don't have the money to go out and purchase this in one lump sum. We just don't have it. But we still have to do the work. We still have to get this stuff done. I don't like this. I wish the equipment had been properly maintained in the first place, but it wasn't. And I'm not even going to go into why. The equipment should have been maintained. It was not. Money was spent elsewhere. I wasn't here. It wasn't my decision. But I run a cemetery. And if I don't put the proper money in the preventative maintenance, if I don't do that, then something that would have cost me $850 per year to get properly prevented and maintained is going to cost me $10,000 or $12,000 to get repaired. And that's what's been the problem in the city of Monessen for the last 6 years. Things have not been maintained. And I'm not condemning anyone for it. I'm just saying that there's been an issue, and money has been an issue. But we need to maintain our equipment. We need to get good equipment. And right now, this is the only way I can see to do it. Do I like it? No. But again, you made a point with me, Tony, when you said, why would we buy someone else's problems? And I agree. Why would we?
Well, that's at the time I made the comment. I believe John made the comment that he looked at some used stuff and it was $130,000, $140,000.
Yeah, well, the best price I think we came up with was like $120-some thousand. And it just, myself, you know, it has to be, we have to have one. We have to replace it, and I can't see buying used. Yeah, you have to manage your finances on this. You have to manage your funding. We do have the funding stream. We can manage it. But you know, you have to take the money from somewhere and you have to properly invest it. And I think this is the way to go.
So that goes into item M, which is purchase a new 444L wheel loader under the CoStarz program. The dealer is Murphy Tractor and Equipment Company. Loan institution is John Deere Corp. Agreement is a lease purchase. PA agency CoStarz contract number 44000199935. Total price $145,165. Liquid fuels fund. There's no money down. The first payment is 1 year from the delivery date in 2021, and the approval has been received from PennDOT. The loan amount is $145,165. Term for 7 years. Interest rate 3.247%, and the solicitor has reviewed those legal documents as well.
Just my one comment on there, where it says loan amount, it's not a loan amount, there's not a loan component to this, it's actually a lease. But there is a interest rate associated with the lease payments, but it's not a loan, which is a distinction that's important under the Local Government Unit Debt Act. So that was my only comment on that.
At the end of the lease, do we purchase the equipment?
Yeah, it's the city's, I forget if it just becomes automatically, or there's a dollar buyout, but yeah, after the 7-year period, it becomes the lease, the city's equipment.
And this would come out of liquid fuels.
Yes.
And we don't have to start payment till next year.
And then 2 years after that. Liquid fuels will pay for the second, third year.
So you're getting basically 3 years of use out of it before you make a full payment.
That's not what
No.
it says.
No.
Or is it?
No, it says first payment's 1 year from the date of delivery in 2021.
Yeah, but what did you say, John, about, you said something about.
Then we will take liquid fuels that pay for the next 2 years.
Oh, I see.
So in essence, we're not, it's 3 years down the road.
So what happens in the last 5 years?
Last 4.
Tell me, as you budget the amount.
Yeah, you would have to budget it. That you would have to budget it.
For 5 years?
4.
Was it the first?
3 years.
No. It says the first payment is 1 year from the date of delivery, so next year would be the first payment.
You can make, correct me if I'm wrong, you can make 3 years payment out of liquid fuels. So that would leave you with 4 years you'd have to budget it.
Again, why are we looking at a new wheel loader? That wasn't even on the radar with any of us talking about it.
36,000.
The one that we have now is rusting away. Just to keep it functional through the summer, you're looking at spending $36,000
This is the loader that they use in the winter
for the
time to
salt.
load. Okay,
Yes.
so, did we look at anything else? I hate to say that this is a lot of money we're spending here.
It's a big equipment.
Yeah, you are correct. You are correct.
I mean, here's the 2013 Volvo with only, I think this had a couple of 200 hours on it. 3,600 hours on it for 80,000.
How many
I mean,
hours?
We use this primarily 100% for the salt.
No. No, you use that quite a bit throughout the city of Monessen.
For what?
Let's see here, when they're patching roads and they pick buckets up to get the millings. I've seen them use it when they've been working on the sewer lines, when they've had to get up on the hillsides and shovel into it. When they were cleaning off the sidewalk on Rebecca Street, I saw them using it there.
Tree removal.
When they use it for tree removals and stuff, when they clean up or down at the garage, they've used it there. They've used it in multiple. Over the years, I've seen them in multiple different scenarios. It's not just like they park it at the salt, and that's all they use it for.
But the salt is probably what's corroded.
Well, the salt, and that's another issue, and that needs to be addressed. And Lois, you would probably have to talk to your people down there to make sure that they have the proper equipment to clean this, because when they do this, salt is corrosive as it is, it needs to be pressure washed off afterwards. I mean, you would need to talk to Rodney to find out if he had the proper equipment to make sure it's clean.
We do have a pressurized
Right.
system. He just got to get the cleaning elements on the materials and do it. They've got to do it, that's all. We'll make sure they do it. We'll also have a second clamp truck we're not going to use, only when we go to pick up trees and that. There'll be a separate clamp for that. And that's into that price there.
You mean there's another bucket
There's
with a
another
claw?
bucket.
With a cloth.
It cost. One day it took them 5.5 hours, 6 hours to load up trucks with branches. They could have grabbed one truckload with one bite and stick it in that truck and be gone. It's time efficient. That's another thing.
Are any of what we currently have worth anything?
Pardon?
Trade-ins.
Like
The
the
trade, is there a trade-in on the
The
one we
trade-in
have?
is $22,000.
For the
For
front
our
load.
We have a $58,000 swing there.
But then, as you'll see on the next item, the street sweeper has no trade-in value.
So this was, if this is going to go on the next meeting, it's going to have to spell out. Because according to the amortization schedule you have here, there's no payment the first year. There's a payment 2021, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. And you need to be saying exactly where the money's coming out of and how it's coming out of and where it's coming out of.
1 month equivalent to line usage.
Well, you're gonna have to, someone's gonna have to state that. People, you can't pass something you don't know where the money's coming from.
No, it's come from line usage. That's
Not all
what-
those years it's not.
That's what it has, line usage.
You just said a couple minutes ago, or Dawn just said that it was
Oh,
gonna
no, this
come,
is the liquid fuels.
you had it budgeted for 4 years. I'm confused, that's what Dawn just said.
No, don't worry about it.
Well, you can't,
Yeah, I understand your concern, and
You can't pass things unless you know exactly where the money's coming from.
we'll make sure that we know exactly where it's coming from. And we'll make sure that you know where it's coming from.
You also can't.
And I'm not being
Yeah, go ahead.
facetious. We will make sure that everyone knows where it's coming from.
You also can't, in a sense, commit a future council to a specific budget.
Well, if
So
we-
the future council would have the ability to budget.
Elsewhere,
The obligation may exist, but how a future council would want to fund it
how would
be
we,
up to
how
that
would we
council.
phrase that, Tim?
I mean.
I don't think you should be making purchases that long that are gonna go into councils that you're not gonna be here.
Well, if we had some of the tax money and the garbage money that we didn't collect
How about the bond?
over the last 5 years,
How about the bond?
or the bond issue, if we'd used some of that money to fix the equipment in a timely fashion, we perhaps wouldn't have to spend it. I don't like to commit to anybody to anything else. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where we have to get this equipment. We have to make these upgrades. It's not, trust me, well, I hate to spend money. I hate to spend it, but we have to spend it.
But as Tim said, you can't obligate a future council for that long to something.
That's not that's not what he said.
You can obligate the city, which includes future councils, for an obligation. You can't bind them to budget for it in a particular manner. So, for example, the payment may become due, because a collective bargaining agreement is essentially the same thing.
They can change it and do whatever they want.
Yeah, but
that's what it says.
how a future council would want to fund that payment obligation for a particular year would be up to that council to decide. You guys could not say,
Yeah.
for all 7 years, it's got to come out of the liquid fuels fund, I don't think that's possible, or the line usage fund or whatever. That would be something that each council, when passing a budget each year, they would have to have the ability
Things
to
will change.
decide when and how to fund that in the budget.
But we could say that our proposed way of paying for it is,
Yeah, you could identify for this year's budget how you're going to pay for it, and you should identify from this year's budget how it's going to be paid for, but then also include, proposal that in future years it would be funded from this, but that does not bind the future councils to using that source of funds for that payment in future years.
There is no way to find something 4 years for the wheel loader too, so that it wasn't so stretched out for 7 years? Because that is a long time for someone to have to manage that amount of money.
oh, I agree, Lois, but
4 years, you deal with
And quite frankly, none of us will be here in 7
Yeah,
years.
I'm just saying, that's a long time to have to manage that amount of money.
no, I got 3.5, and I'm going fishing. But the thing is, Lois, we have to set this up so we can afford this. Again, if we had had some of this other money that we hadn't collected, or if we had taken
Right.
some of the bond, when we redid the bond, if we
Is
had
that
taken some of that
something-
money and used to purchase this equipment, we wouldn't be in a situation where we're having to do this. But the previous council chose to use that money in different ways, and that was their right.
Do we consider if, say, for instance, we're doing well, like, the next couple of years?
Pay it
Can
off,
we pay,
pay it off.
instead of it just stretching out, we might want to consider if we have more pocket of money, pay more
I
on that,
hope-
so it's not
I
stretched
hope
out
we
so
have
far.
that.
I know, but you
That-
never know, things
Right.
might do an upturn.
Well, you never know.
Right, you
You
don't know
never
what's
know.
gonna happen in
And
the
I
next.
agree,
just don't.
I agree with you, Lois.
If we can, we need to knock that off
But
quickly.
you have to do it, work it so that you can spend the money now. It's like, and I hate to do this, but in the fire department, we went and we took a look at the refurbing a piece of fire apparatus. And we had to string it out so that we could afford the payments each year. I would love to pay the lump sum of $175,000 up front to get the truck refurbished. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of money. And in this case, the city doesn't have that kind of money to where we
I
can take
understand that.
and just go out and give them one lump sum and say, here, we're done. We don't have to worry about it. I hate interest. But sometimes it's the cost of doing business and maintaining your city, in this case.
I know the sweeper truck is definitely done. There's no way we could hold off on that, on the other one.
I wish we could.
No way,
I wish we could.
Hold off on this one.
the wheel loader.
My
I know
only,
the super truck is basically.
my only concern is
Because it
on,
breaks down all the time.
on that front end lower loaders,
Right,
they've never done any of the
the
hydraulics being changed out. They've never, some of the rust, the actual pieces of the unit are rusted out and have to be totally replaced. How old is that unit, John? Mr. Harner?
22 years,
Uh,
1998, 22 years.
That unit's 22 years old. You're running into the point where you're not even maybe able to get parts. So do we keep investing in maintaining that? Do we spend $38,000 this year? Or do we bite the bullet and get the equipment like we need to do? And that's council's decision. Something to think about between now and next week.
My other question on top of that, and this goes back all the way to the beginning, is looking at the street sweeper, looking at this wheel loader. Whose department does that fall in? Lois? It's Lois's department. It's, yeah, loader. It's street crew. It's her department.
And
Nobody talked to her about before going out and getting bids and getting prices.
actually, that's not quite true. I spoke with her. I told her that he was looking into some other different options. So that's not exactly the truth.
Do you have more than one?
Actually, that's a CoStar's price, that's the best price.
No, different models. Tyco makes one there from Plano, Texas.
Yeah,
We looked at one of those last year, except it was a $300,000 unit and it was out of sight. It was too big. There's 4 or 5 different companies that make that stuff.
oh, I agree, there's different ones. I do believe that the street sweeper, they had some input into getting the proper size, because of this, the particular one that they were looking at was a little bit smaller, the used ones, the capacity was smaller, and I do recall some kind of issue there, but I'm not sure what it was.
What it is that the capacity was 6 yards, this is 4 yards, but this empties into a container. You don't have to empty it on the ground, then come with the front loader, take that out, and pour it in the container.
It'll go right into a dumpster?
Yeah, right into a dumpster. You don't have to touch it.
So would say that the guys are out sweeping,
Yeah.
they're making a pass, they can run up and dump
Dump
it
it
in.
and go. You don't have to get out to a high lift and lift that up.
That's my point.
So what he's asking is though, these are one company for the same thing. There have to be other companies that have the same exact type of wheel loader and same exact type of street sweeper. This is a big cost item. We didn't get any other ones, did we not?
That's CoStar's.
So you
Doesn't
still
matter.
don't have to get any
No,
other?
when you go to, if you went to another company that sold those,
Right.
they would give you the same price.
Okay, I
No,
was
So,
just-
so the
no,
question,
CoStar's
the
asking.
question,
What she's saying is, it doesn't have to be a John Deere. It could be a
No,
Kubota.
It
I was
doesn't,
It could be a,
He's saying that
it could be a Volvo.
it could be,
It could be a Caterpillar.
it could be.
But it would be the same cost, you're saying?
Well, probably, no, I wouldn't go that far.
I would
I
just
imagine
ask.
there'd be some differences. But if for the same capability, the same quality, yeah, I think it would probably be about the same. It's like if I go look at a New Holland Ford commercial tractor, and then I go look at a John Deere or a Kubota, the prices are all going to be fairly the same. Are they going to be exactly? No. No. I mean, do you have a problem with the companies?
That's just the high price item. You normally do go to other
Price it
companies
around.
and price it around.
You go and look at
If you
different
might find
models. And
something that
again,
you might have a $10,000-$15,000.
and I
difference.
appreciate the work you did, Dawn, but that's her department.
I didn't do all the work.
But somebody else did the work, and it's her department. And we had this
Actually,
discussion, and you agreed,
Actually, he was authorized to look into this
By
at the
who?
last meeting. Council.
not for the loader.
No.
Well,
We didn't know
also-
nothing about the loader.
Well, actually, the loader came up, it was kind of somewhat inadvertent, from what I understand, when they found out the cost of repair. And that's what we're discussing also too, is the cost of that repair was gonna be $36,000.
Okay, so my question is, Lois, did they tell you?
No, no.
See-
My question is, who is talking to who?
Yeah, no, you guys are
Because-
talking to people, and you're not letting
Because
us talk to
I don't
them.
have a problem. My question is this, you're saying when they found out. So when they found out, why aren't they calling us, hey, we got, and this is just an issue because they know if there's an issue, they'll call me. So it's not like don't call me, Rodney calls me if he wants to address, so if this is a major issue, if you're
You
saying
were-
when they find out, why didn't you say, well, we need to call your director right now and get them involved in this? If they're not calling and you guys know about
See,
this,
that's fine,
you just
Joe.
say, we can't go forward without talking to your director. And that's the way it should be. If you guys are getting a call and they're saying, it's gonna cost $36,000 to repair this, we had this looked into. So, okay, we need to run this by Lois real
Well,
quick.
let me put it to you this way, Lois, and I don't know how this went down.
But I'm just saying, it should
But
be
what I'm-
directed to
what
the
I'm- What I'm
director.
just saying is, say that there's an issue with the equipment, and they should call you first? You feel?
Here's one, this is not just an issue with equipment, this
No,
is
no,
a
no, no, let
purchase.
me finish,
Okay.
let me just finish what
Okay.
I'm, if there's an issue with the equipment, like something needs repaired, they need to call you
They
first?
don't call me from general repairs, no, because that's general.
Okay,
This is
now-
not general,
Now, you're correct.
right.
So if they get hold of the city administrator in case there's an issue with the repairs of that, correct?
Because those are general repairs. You
Okay,
need
now-
this, you need tires, you need, that's general.
When
I
they-
don't expect them to do
When they
that.
had these other repairs that needed to be done,
Right.
that totaled 36,000, or was it 38,000? Whatever it was. They should have called you first, or should they?
If they talk to him, he should have called me, yes.
Here's what council,
$36,000, that should be brought before.
here's what
the
council
board.
did the last 2 years.
Definitely.
Rodney needed something, or
Right.
anybody needed something, or anyone needed something in this city, they went to Judy. Judy contacted the director of that particular department and the rest of council and said, hey, this is what's going on. The guys or the ladies are requesting this. This is something you need to talk about for a discussion. And it stopped there. It was discussed by council. Council makes the decisions.
Well, we're making the decisions
Well,
now.
not after, this is after the horse already left the barn. And we've talked about this
I
so
don't
many
think,
times.
I don't think any horse has left the barn here yet.
This is gonna go on the next week agenda to get passed.
Again, we're discussing it here. And I can understand what Lois is saying, I do. I can see that.
But we had this discussion, and your exact words were, Dawn, if we
Hey.
did that to you as a fire truck, you would freak out. And you said, you're absolutely
And I
correct.
probably would. However, if it was a situation like this, where this came up, this is coming up at a meeting, at a work session. No one's trying to hide anything from you or from Lois. I see Lois's point. I do see your
Yeah.
point, Lois.
Yeah, not little stuff, because they know what to do on a general basis.
But if it was
Okay.
like,
But a big ticket item.
what would be the limit would be, Lois?
I trust them on just your general, I trust what they know, but that is a big ticket item. Now, your general, I need new tires, I need brakes, stuff like that. No, you're not gonna call me for every little thing. But this is a big thing here. $36,000 is a big thing. Okay. That's all I'm saying, not your general everyday thing, but this is not every day.
No,
Neither is a $40,000 fix, that's not general every day either.
Well,
I think
I
we're
have to
all
agree.
intelligent enough to know that, okay? We're not asking anything that's out of this world.
I
Okay.
would agree.
Right, that's
I would
all we're
agree.
asking.
And even it went one step farther, just for informational, say it was $3,000 or $4,000, okay, and they couldn't get a hold of Lois. It went to the director of finance, because that person made the final decision, even over the directors, of we have the money to spend it, or we don't have money to spend it.
In the Monessen has an ordinance.
I'm just
that-
telling you the way it was.
Well, I'm telling you that Monessen has an ordinance that establishes the city administrator as deputy director of every department.
But they don't oversee the directors.
I will provide you with a copy of that ordinance.
They don't overreach the directors of what the directors are doing. That's why you have directors for each
I
department.
will send you the ordinance.
Matt, I'm sorry, Tim, you telling me?
So, in third-class cities with city administrators, because not all third-class cities have city administrators, the direct report of the city employees is to the city administrator. From there, the city administrator should reach out at the request. I mean, if individual department heads, because it works differently, some department heads don't want to, be as intimately involved with those decisions, don't want to micromanage, there's all sorts of reasons as to what they do want to hear about versus what they don't want to hear about, what they want to be involved in, what they don't want to be involved in. But when a department head makes a request to, have updates from the city administrator for their department, it would be appropriate for the city administrator to reach out to that department head with anything in their department that they've asked for updates on. So now that I think it's clear that there's an expectation of, a big ticket item like this is definitely something that would require that. I mean, I think that would be a good practice to follow to make sure that everybody's departments and everybody's being kept up to speed with what's going on in their department.
Because I'm not a micromanager, because you have to trust your people that they know what they're doing. They've been here for 15, 20 years. But those big ticket items, things that are gonna change your outcome of your budget and everything else, we should be involved with that. That's why we have a city administrator to oversee the day-to-day things, but the big things, we should be included in those and before any decision made. Really should.
Yeah, I mean, it is appropriate that this comes up at a work session. I mean, and that's what a work session like this is intended to do, to address those sorts of issues and bring those to light and give you guys the opportunity to consider those decisions and talk about them. Yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier, item N, our current 2008 street sweeper has no trade-in value, so there's a suggestion that we can place an advertisement on Municipal for parts. So obviously, if we get a new one, we're not going to use it, so it's just going to sit there and rust. Anything else on that? Okay. Item O, at the request of Humane Action Pittsburgh, I sent them a proclamation opposing the indiscriminate killing of wildlife in the form of wildlife killing contests. This doesn't really affect Monessen at all. It's basically like my support letter to them and what they're trying.
Where in God's name is someone having a contest?
Apparently, and I didn't know this, apparently Pennsylvania is the highest ranking state for something like this. With like coyotes and like animals of that caliber. So obviously no one in Monessen is doing this, and this is not, because I just want to put it out there, like while I do not hunt, I am not opposed to hunting or fishing. I come from like generations of hunters and fishers, and that's not what this is intended to be. They're basically trying to get the regulations changed. It's like those the contest where people like go out and they hunt these like animals for like, it's like the thrill, and then they get like big prize money for them. Apparently Pennsylvania is like one of the biggest states for this. So they're trying to convince the General Assembly to look at it, and so they're asking mayors for proclamations of support.
I thought we had links with it.
No. In fact, like, we do have some coyotes in Monessen, but we have way more deer than coyotes, so.
Well, you have a lot more coyotes than you would expect.
Probably. As long as they stay away from my house, we're good.
They don't. They run that hillside.
Oh, I'm sorry. But I also felt that I put it in here too to show that Monessen does have an ordinance that, people aren't allowed to kill, injure, trap, hunt on city property. Like, that's pretty self-explanatory, so. But that's what that is.
As long as you don't violate the Pennsylvania Game Commission rules and regulations.
Right.
Because they supersede any state or, any local municipality.
Right. And I think they're approaching the Game Commission to talk to them about this issue in Pennsylvania, but obviously, again, it doesn't really affect Monessen directly. There haven't been any issues, so. So the next thing, item P, is in regards to 1 Rendell Wayne Lane. And I will hand it over to the solicitor. I believe this is.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion it's an executive session item, so since I'm not totally familiar with this, we should discuss this one in executive session.
So we can do that.
So we can just hold that till the end.
Okay. And so item Q, as you know, Governor Wolf is putting our county into green on Friday. So I talked to the solicitor about, while we typically don't make motions at work sessions, we should make a motion to lift the city's emergency declaration for Friday to fall in line with the governor's guidelines. And so that will obviously open back parks and public facilities. The library has their own plan in place.
What is their plan?
They'll be doing curbside, I believe, starting June 8th. And then I think on June 15th, they're opening back up with guidelines set by the Commonwealth libraries.
And how's that going to affect the rec center down here, the green space?
Well, so it would open the Civic Center, and it would open this building back up, all public facilities, the parks, et cetera.
Okay.
So obviously, even in the green phase, the state is still encouraging people to wear masks and social distance and do all that stuff. So we'll try to encourage people to keep doing that. We've been really lucky. I haven't heard any more on cases in Monessen, so I think we're at 6. Obviously no deaths, thankfully, so we've been really safe, and we have a very high vulnerable population here, so that's been a very big concern. So I will make a motion to lift the city's March 17th, 2020 emergency declaration effective on June 5th, 2020. That's this coming Friday. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Let's, just point of discussion, so that is to lift all items in the declaration that was administered by the city then?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then just as a note, if this passes, then it will need to be ratified at a motion at the upcoming
Right.
voting meeting.
Right.
So then that doesn't allow for the next meeting to be,
Correct. It would be anyway, because the governor's
okay,
lifting
so
the
then
phase.
it,
There's
okay, I
up
was just,
to,
because I know we're not ratifying it.
right, because there's up to, I think in the green phase, you can have up to 250
Okay.
people, but they're still encouraging social distancing and all that, so.
Okay.
Well, when we lift this, then they'll be able to have their softball practices and everything.
Right.
When you're physically exerting yourself, there's no way they can wear these.
No, I agree, because I tried walking on the walking track with this on, and I felt like I was going to pass out. So,
Yeah, well, you're rebreathing your carbon dioxide,
Right.
so your oxygen levels are going down. There's no way that you can be involved in any kind of sport and wear these kinds of things.
yeah, and I don't know what the various leagues, what their plans are.
What's the state guidelines as far as sports then, in the green
You
zone?
said- Send us something.
Yeah, I mean, the state guidelines, the mandatory guidance from the Department of Health is to still require for any recreation, sports, summer programs to conduct the social distancing and to continue to wear masks where feasible. But outdoor activities typically are not required to have masks on. But
Good.
once again, even outdoor activities, you're supposed to adhere to social distancing requirements. So sports, that social distancing is a big part of that, which is most sports outside, other than just close contact sports. Yeah, that wouldn't be problematic. Close contact sports, obviously, that's a separate issue that people will need to abide by that requirement that participants social distance. So.
Anything?
We really need to talk about that, because whether, now softball is not as bad, but you will have 2 people watching somebody on first. But football is this summer,
Right.
for Little League. So
When does that start, Lois?
I think they usually start practicing like late July, early August.
Well,
By
times may
then,
change
hopefully-
between now and
Where do
then.
they practice?
A lot of them practice down 9th Street, and then they have their games upstate, of course.
I wasn't sure if they practiced at the stadium.
No, a lot of them practice on 9th Street, most of them.
That is an issue that will be coming up, and because people are going to start practicing in the closer contact sports. You may want to not make a specific decision on that, other than to require people that are using the parks to follow social distancing guidelines. But at some point, it's anticipated that the state, notably the Pennsylvania Department of Education, which governs schools and school athletic activities, are going to be issuing some guidance. So you may want to mirror those guidelines with respect to the you may want to mirror those guidelines with respect to the state, yeah, with your parks. And the city administrator just brought a copy. This is the stuff I think I emailed to everybody for reference. A lot of it's not mandatory guidance, it's just national organizations that are trying to help municipalities and organizations do parks and recreation about guidelines that can be followed. And then I think there was one section that it is mandatory guidelines for summer recreation programs and things that actual municipalities put on. So we would just want to make sure we're following that. If it's a program that the municipality sponsors, I'm not aware of anything right now that the.
We haven't sponsored it.
Yeah, okay,
It's all
so
been
that's not
private.
an issue then for us at this point.
I think we should have something set, so if people start calling, because softball's already called, we should have something in written that we're gonna be able to tell them, that we're all telling the exact same thing.
Yeah, well, maybe between now and next week, we
Right,
can
'cause
put
I
a
know
policy together.
We need to do that, because they're already calling,
Well,
and they're saying that.
basically, Lois, would they have to follow those guidelines?
Yeah, I mean, one
I
thing
mean, that's-
I do recommend is that you give those guidelines to anybody who's
That's
Yeah,
what,
has
that's what I
organized
said, we need
activity
to
in the
have
park.
something on paper
Right
that we
there.
can give to them.
Yeah.
Right there.
It's athletic, it tells you every,
Yeah,
We can
this-
have them
sport
available.
and
Yeah,
everything.
these ones would be good to share, and then
Their
in
front page has
particular,
them all on.
I'm not sure, there was that other one that was the actual Department of Health guidelines that I'd sent. Definitely print those one off, because those ones are mandatory.
Do we need to adopt these at the next meeting?
You don't have to adopt these at the next meeting, because these ones are guidelines, so these ones are non-mandatory, but the Department of Health ones for programs
mandatory.
are mandatory, so we want to make sure that, you don't have to adopt those because they're mandatory already, but
Yeah, you
you
have
want to
to
make sure
follow the
people are
guidelines.
following them.
Will we be able to have graduation parties at the Civic Center room? For the Twinsville graduate?
Theoretically, it'll be open, so, but we're gonna encourage everyone just to wear masks and social distance though, so.
Y'all gonna let us know how many people are allowed to be there? or-
The state says up to 250 people in the green phase.
Also, but the state says it's based on the square footage
Right.
of the building. It's like, you're allowed a dozen people, I think, per 1,000 square foot. So you still have to follow that even while we're in the green zone.
So maybe we'll also have to figure out
You have to
how
figure
many
out-
people can comfortably be in the civic center.
Yeah. People are gonna, basically, they probably should be able to let someone know where they're having it. Like if they're having it at St. Vincent or the Civic Center, that should maybe come to, hey, this is where we're having it. How many people can we have?
Yeah,
Well-
and I'm sure
Yeah.
every venue is gonna.
That would be their
that.
responsibility, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
But
not
for
our
us-
responsibility, that's the venue.
For us, for the civic center, the park, the library, I think the Commonwealth Libraries is telling the library what to do, and they're obviously, this is state library department, so they're gonna follow what the state is saying. So we need to be concerned about the pavilions and the civic center, I think primarily, and this building too. So,
They basically just call down here, if it's our buildings, and
yeah.
they, that's how we do it.
Yeah, so we'll need to put something together so we
So
can
we'll have
say,
it.
here's what you need to do.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that 1 dozen for 1,000 square foot, I was wondering how they were calculating.
If you don't have a capacity rating in place,
Mhm.
then you have to go with the 1,000 square foot measure. If you have right now they're talking 25% capacity, so if you had 100 people capacity, you were allowed to have 25. If you didn't have a capacity rating, you got to go with the 1,000 square foot rule. The reason I'm aware of that is dealing with the Hilltop Firemen's Club.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we received guidance from the state on that.
Yeah, so maybe we could put together between now and next week a little info sheet, just outlining all of that, like what the state is mandating, but also what the state is suggesting, and we can just hand that out to people and post it as
Right.
well.
Oh, it's all listed here.
Yeah, that's that thing that Tim emailed earlier. Well, I think it was late last week. That was a good resource. There's still, we still have a motion on the floor, so, could you call the roll, John?
Plural. Right. He
Can you
wants to
call the roll,
on that
John?
Motion Q.
Call the roll on this motion
We have a motion on the floor.
to
for the
ratify or not to ratify, but to lift the,
Item
Oh,
Q.
okay,
Yeah.
Councilman Coles?
Aye.
Councilman Chakowski?
Yes.
Councilman Thomas?
Yes.
Councilman Gregor?
Aye.
Mayor Sherrod?
Yes, the motion carries. That'll be effective June 5th.
and once again, you will need to have a ratification motion on the agenda for the regular
I
meeting.
have that down.
Item R, the USDA project, seeking approval for bond counsel agreement for Jeff Mills of Cozen O'Connor Law Firm and a legal services agreement for Tim Witt for the project. John, Tim, do you have anything on this?
Just USDA reached out to us, this is a precondition for getting the grant and loans through USDA, so this is the process of approving those for that agreement, so, or for those agreements for that grant and or loan, they're still working through some of those details, so.
It's good that there's some movement through that. And again, once we have more details that are more concrete from them, we can present that to the public in full, but
So
there's-
we are going to have a public meeting?
yeah, I
to
would
let
like
people-
to, but
the
we
information
don't have
they-
any more info yet on it.
Yeah, once we get the info, we're going to have a public presentation.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, to get some of that info, you have to submit a bond and know what you're eligible to get as part of that application process. So this is one of the items that's necessary to compile that bond application to figure out what you're eligible for from a grant and or loan perspective, so.
Okay, and the last thing, I don't know, did you all get a copy of this last one? Okay, because we got it in today. This is for a police accountability and internal affairs policy. So given the climate of everywhere at the moment, this is not like anything on anyone in the police department or internally, but it's better to be proactive with this in case something major does happen. We've obviously had incidents in the past too, so we want to make sure that we cover ourselves. And Jim had brought this up last year about wanting to do it, and he brought it up to me again. So I thought that now is probably a good time to do this. So basically, it's a board that could, look at issues regarding internal affairs in the police department. You said typically, how many people did you say?
Yeah, so there's two functions that this board would have, and it unfortunately it's more appropriate now given the current climate, but it's a good policy to have. The two functions, one are if you would get a citizen complaint against the police officer, it creates a separate board that would actually review that complaint, process that complaint, come up with a determination or recommendation to council with respect to their findings on that complaint. And then also the secondary function that this board has is it would, it enables a independent committee to review policies and procedures the city has in place and to make recommendations if there's if it's in their opinion, there's a problem or something that needs to be amended with respect to a policy, police use of force, and whatever that policy may be, that this provides another set of eyes on those policies to, get a different perspective on them per se. So generally, most municipalities will have at least 3 people on this. Typically, it's somebody that's affiliated with the police department, although not a police employee, him or herself. And then some municipalities also like to have some citizen participation on this committee as well, given its nature of kind of mediating, making sure that there's some oversight there. So
And
once
it is
again, that's up
confidential.
to, it's confidential, absolutely. As a city board, it is confidential. It's up to you guys though in terms of who you actually appoint. My recommendation is obviously don't put anybody, nothing against the police department or anybody affiliated with the police department. I think it's a great police department, but don't put anybody in the police department on the board, on the committee, so.
Yep, so, take a look at the policy that Tim drafted and see if anything, sticks out. This would establish the board, and then we have to figure out how we wanna handle appointing people to it, if we wanna go with 3, who we wanna appoint, that sort of thing. But I do think now is probably a good time to put something like this in place. Someone told me that they thought that we had something like this decades ago, and it just kind of like fizzled out. It's possible, I haven't found anything on it, but it's possible that there was something like this at some point. So, yeah.
Mr. Witt,
Yes, sir.
someone from council will be on here.
You could have somebody from council on there, and I'd recommend that somebody from council be on there, because that does serve as, in a sense, a liaison and a representation from the city government itself. Oftentimes, once again, you will want citizen participation on
Okay,
this as well.
you're recommending 3?
At least 3 people on this.
Would 5 be better?
5 is fine, if you can find 5, because sometimes it's tough to find.
Well, you said
People to fill these
you could set a
positions.
minimum of 3, and then you could
Yep.
appoint 5. Okay.
Tim, is this an ordinance or resolution?
No, that would just be a resolution that would
Resolution.
adopt the policy.
And in the resolution, we would just put like what the guidelines for appointing.
Yeah, you would want to include in there the number of people you would want to appoint, you could say 3 to 5. And then, if there were specific guidelines on who you wanted to appoint in terms of a member of council, a member of public, the mayor, a lot of times the mayor's on there because as the person in charge of overseeing the police department, sometimes that's appropriate. But it's up to you guys, you can include all of that in the resolution as a guideline.
So yeah, take a look at it and see if anything sticks out or if anything needs change. But I think it's a good time to be proactive about that.
You end up on the road in this next meeting, or no?
It depends on if there's anything, it might be on the agenda. If there's no questions on it or any changes or anything, then yeah, but otherwise,
Well, even if there was changes, couldn't we still vote on it the next meeting if we discussed it?
Yeah, I mean, if everyone wants to.
Yep.
That was the
Tim
main
would have to
concern.
review it though, right?
You need any changes?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was the main concern, I know some of you have been out protesting, and that was the main concern of the citizens, who's policing the police, or what, measures y'all have in place, if something happens, and, some people were supposed to come here with me, but that was one of the main concerns of the citizens, that I've been getting a lot of inboxes, so this is awesome that Jim's are doing that. Jim's are already on it, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jim brought it up and, like I said,
I'm meeting with them tomorrow,
good.
so, yeah.
It's better to do it now, so that we're covered if anything does happen. And I like to think that it won't, but with how things are, you never know, sadly, so. Anything else?
Executive session?
Yeah.
I have a couple questions on before we go with that executive session. More of 1 or 2 is just questions of informational, and I didn't think about this after our last meeting. Mary, you mentioned that you went on a conference, it was on the list of bills for $750. Is that a?
It's not a conference, it's a membership to the Mayor's Innovation Project conference.
Okay, so it's a membership.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's under the line item for conferences.
Something else. 2 more things, that's all I have. Just as a curious note, I noticed this when we interviewed people for the clerk, for the county. I just thought it was strange. No, I know the front door is locked. Okay. The key changed on it, the lock changed. And the reason I know that is because I didn't know, it'd been the first time I'd come down here since the epidemic or the pandemic and all that other stuff. And I went to use my key, and it doesn't fit, doesn't work. So my question is twofold. One, did we change the front door lock? And if we did, were we notifying everybody to get a key?
Actually, may I?
Sure.
Actually, when we were advised by the state police that we needed to limit access to the building because of the ongoing investigation, we were instructed to let them. I do not have a key. Councilman Coles does not have a key.
I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that we weren't told.
We did that under the advisement of the state police to change the locks, to secure the evidence. That's why the locks were changed.
Okay. And being that I'm responsible for buildings and nobody told me.
I can't comment on that in public.
Okay. Just asking. Okay. The last thing is when, and I asked this at the last meeting, when can I hopefully expect all the financials that I requested from Mr. Coles and Mr. Harha?
Well, I'm sure you'll be able to get them as soon as we get someone hired in that position. Unfortunately, and I'm not making excuses for anyone. Unfortunately, with the situation with the lack of personnel down here, it's very difficult to get any of that on a daily basis or a weekly basis. It would be nice if we had the personnel to get all that information to you whenever you ask. And I'm sure if you came down after work or during the day or something and stopped in, they would be able to show you what's going on. But as far as collating and putting this all together with all that's going on, especially now that we've lost our code enforcement,
But I've been asking for this for over 5 months.
and we've been trying to hire somebody to do that work for the last few
So
months.
why can't we just get printouts from twice a month from January, February, March, April, May of what the bank balances were and all the accounts and everything?
We have been giving you the balances at the meetings, have we not?
I'd like to see the printouts from the bank balances and everything. I don't, if I'm not correct, please correct me, Mr. Witt. I don't have to beg for that. If I ask for it, I get it as a councilman, am I correct?
As a council member, I mean, as a council member, yes, that's something that council members are entitled to. So that would be something that individual council members.
I've asked many months, so I don't have to beg for it. If I ask for something, it should be provided to me. Bottom line, just like any of you.
I agree, and if we had the people to do it.
That's not an excuse. I'm asking.
I'm not making an excuse.
But again, we can't keep continuing going on if some of us don't have an idea what money is in our departments. But we're spending a lot of money in our departments. So, again, I'll ask the question, when could I expect all the financials that I believe correctly, and forgive me if I'm wrong, Mr. Witt, you did specifically, you asked me questions last meeting about what I was looking for and everything else, and I thought that was the end of it. But I have not gotten anything, nor I don't believe Lois has. Have you? No. So when can we expect full documentation of what's going on in the city? And I have that right as she does.
Okay. Is there any,
I can leave.
No, we have public comment.
do you have a?
Oh, public comment, no. I thought you meant you could talk.
No.
Is someone going to answer my question? Because it hasn't been addressed.
When
Everybody look at
we
each
hire
other.
someone, because I'm not going to expect John to be down here for 15 hours like Judy was.
But that's, some of that information be
And-
it should be very easily at the fingertips.
All of that information was done by the previous payroll clerk who gave it to Judy. The
So you're
reports
telling
that
me
you
at any point in
requested.
time, you can't call up Community Bank and know what the balance is in our accounts? Because if you can't do that, we're in worse shape than I
Well,
thought.
I'm
we were.
speaking for John here, and he could speak for himself, but John is also currently acting as CDBG clerk, city clerk, payroll, well, not payroll clerk, city clerk, code enforcement officer, because that hasn't stopped either. So I'm not quite sure when he will find time until we have a payroll clerk hired, which is hopefully next week.
Unfortunately, the situation's been like this for the last few years, and with the manpower and personnel, people not
People have retired and not been
been
replaced. Or
people have
and not
left,
been replaced.
and you did make an effort to replace the accounts payable clerk individual, and it didn't happen. But when Judith was here, she basically did the accounts payable for you, and she had that information for you. But that meant that she didn't do a lot of her other jobs that had dumped on her, as far as city clerk position, as far as the city administrator. That work wasn't done, and we're still trying to get caught up on that. If it hadn't been for the efforts ongoing of Mr. Harhai to get caught up on, like, the liquid fuels,
Yeah, which took
and
like 2
the
weeks.
workman's compensation insurance, which hadn't been paid, and we were going to lose that funding as far as liquid fuels and for some of the other sources. We weren't going to get that money because all that other work hadn't been done. He is in a bind. I wish I could tell you that you could have that information at any time you want it, and you should be able to get that information. But due to constraints of personnel, a lot of that stuff it's very difficult to get in a timely fashion. It's just recently we've had a rush on pool permits. We've had people that want to put pools in since they can't go to swimming pools, and they're putting them in their backyards and such. Now, on each one of those calls, someone has to leave the building and go do this. Unfortunately, for Mr. Harhai, it falls on him now. So while he's trying to do code enforcement, he's still trying to rectify the situation with the workman's compensation. He's still meeting with different people about the different insurance policies that we have.
But no disrespect to John, he's not authorized nor certified to do any code in this city. If that's the case, it should be going to K-9 for anything.
No, that's not, I don't think that's quite true as far as issuing.
You have to have certifications for.
They have, when he goes up and sees those people, this has to go to K2.
But there are certifications for code.
But yes, he does the paperwork and he sends it to K2. K2
Well, you
has
just
to
told me
approve
John
all this.
unfortunately has to leave the office and go to
He
the
has
place.
to, he does, he has to go check it out.
But you had this problem for the last 2 years. There was no certification in here. None.
No,
And you let it go.
No, whoa, excuse me, John, may I? Yeah, he's absolutely correct. You're worried about his certification, but the previous code office, you weren't worried about his certification.
Either of their certificates.
Either of theirs, but now we're concerned.
Nitpick.
What's changed? No, excuse me, what's changed? You weren't concerned about Marvin, but you're
Marvin?
concerned? He was not certified.
Marvin took some
You did a great
classes.
injustice to the citizens of Monessen.
He did
You
not.
did.
John, excuse me,
I did?
not your place. Mine. You were concerned, you're concerned about him, but you weren't concerned about the certifications before. It's one or the other. You're either concerned all the time or you're not concerned at all. Now, what's the difference? What's the difference now, Councilman? What's the difference now between Marvin not being certified, him going out and doing the legwork, turning it into K2 to make sure that it abides by all the rules and
Why don't we
regulations?
just have K2 do it? He doesn't have to do the legwork. That's what we're paying them for anyways.
Then why did we have Marvin
They
here?
do it.
And why did we have Marvin here?
Because I wasn't certified, and it wasn't my job.
Why did we have Marvin here for those years?
Why didn't you show up for 2 years?
He is doing
Why
what
did we
Marvin
have
is doing
Marvin
because
and
Marvin
Lloyd
is
Arbridge?
retired.
They did a
Overkill.
bang-up job for what they did.
That ain't
Now,
the
what
way
But
they
they were
did-
not
That's why we're
certified.
talking about that.
They weren't certified. Now it makes a difference, but before it didn't.
You didn't, right.
I'm saying, why can't K2 take that burden?
You are not saying what he's saying. He's trying to give you the information to straighten you out, and you won't accept it. And you were in part responsible for putting people in there that weren't. And if you're now going to say K2 should have done it, why the hell didn't you get them to do it? Or
We
you
didn't
do it
use K2.
before you hired the people?
We didn't use K2
You
for that.
wasted money.
We didn't use K2 for that.
You have
But
people,
you see, keep it up and you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble down here, brother.
How's that gonna happen?
You just keep it
Yeah.
up.
How?
Gil,
You keep it up.
He is doing the work that
Keep it
Marvin
up.
was doing before Marvin resigned. Because we currently do not have a code enforcement officer.
Correct.
So he is doing the work
So
of
you-
5 people now.
Marvin wasn't certified before, so technically what you're telling me, that we didn't have a code enforcement officer before. Is that what you're telling me?
by
If he
that
was
stand-
not certified.
If by that standard, then that's correct.
So for the last 2 years, underneath your administration,
Okay, first, let's stop one thing.
no, I'm just
It's
talking
not,
about,
it's, now, we're gonna clarify one thing, and I'll agree with you. We're
Go
gonna
ahead.
clarify one thing, and we're gonna get this right. This isn't my administration. It was this
You're
administration.
still acting like it is.
It is this
You're
administration.
still acting like it is.
You weren't here for 2 years, you know
think-
nothing.
When you
Don't
were-
tell- you know
The
why?
bottom line
You
was,
you're the reason
this
I wasn't here.
was,
Okay.
this
You're gonna
is
get
still,
on good. I told you're
This is
gonna get
still-
yourself in a lot of whatever.
who was
All right.
deputy?
You are the reason I
Gil,
wasn't here for 2 years, mister. You're the one that screwed this city up money-wise. And you're sitting there nitpicking at everything that everybody's trying to do to get straightened out. I'm gonna tell you what's something that you need to know. You talking about healing with this council, you are never, ever going to heal this council. You know why? People don't like you, mister.
okay, Bill, I mean, wait, okay.
Is there
sorry,
anything
okay.
else about the code?
Bottom line, brother.
You looked like you were gonna say something.
No, I was
to
just gonna
clarify.
say, so when we're talking about code enforcement, there are certain aspects that a code enforcement officer can do without certification. So for example, the best thing is going around and seeing who's mowed their grass and who hasn't, and can stick up a ruler and, measure how tall the grass is, right? There are other elements of a code enforcement officer's position that a lot of municipalities have a code enforcement officer do, which involves building inspections, more structural elements, things like that.
Health inspection.
Health inspections, exactly, that if you don't have certifications and training to do that, you shouldn't be doing that as a code enforcement officer. So, you may have had a code enforcement officer in different variations of that role. Now, I don't know what certifications were obtained or were not obtained, or what role was played or wasn't played, or what they were enforcing. But that's just generally the guidelines that you want to follow. Make sure that whoever is enforcing something is certified to enforce that specific aspect of a code enforcement.
And to my knowledge, he never did anything that had to do with construction or anything like that. 'cause
But he did
wasn't
health
on-
inspections,
He did do
and he
health
did not have the certification to do that.
I just want to tell you, I received instructions from Bill Wetzel at K2 Engineering, exactly what I could do. And that's all I'm doing.
Oh, I'm just saying, if we could
And I'm being
alleviate that off of
criticized with no substance whatsoever. I know exactly what I can do, and that's it. That's what I'm doing.
And just as a side note, the fact that you're doing that may represent a cost-saving measure, because otherwise you may have to pay, K2 to do that if it's something that you're not doing. And so, at least temporarily, I understand it's not a sustainable solution for the long term, but at least temporarily, that could be a fill-in as long as you're not doing anything that K2 hasn't instructed you to do or authorized you that you're able to do. To the extent you're doing it until there's a replacement in place, there could be a cost savings to the city for that.
Yep.
So you're only doing what K2 told you to do?
Absolutely, and then I send him a copy of my permit, and he comes in and does the engineering. Nothing more. And all the complaints that you have about the grass, the trees, the weeds and everything, that's all maintenance. You just work with it. That's not a building code or anything like that. Wouldn't even attempt to do that.
You have a nice little stack on your desk though of
Oh, yeah.
stuff.
We got a backlog because of the pandemic.
Right.
There were actually 20 homes that go into, plus the other 40 or 50 grass issues. probably 40.
Is there anything else from anyone?
Public?
Anything?
Gotcha.
Public? Devon?
No.
No? All right, motion to adjourn at 9:02.